Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Yo, to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, how we doing, man? Feels a lot like that episode last week versus the Niners. Here we are again, back versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Another close loss for the Chargers, and these things are starting to add up, aren't they? We always just get so close and fall apart at the last second, and this has been a trend for a long time if you've been a Chargers fan. When are we going to break out of this chain? I don't know, but with this game in particular, I gotta tell you, dudes, it was honestly a great game, okay? I feel a heck of a lot better about this game than I did our last loss versus Kansas City, which had a whole bunch of reffing nonsense. This time, it was a very hard-fought game on both sides, very entertaining, probably one of the better primetime games I've seen on a Sunday night this season. Still, you got to sit back sometimes, lean back in your chair and say it is what it is in terms of how the game panned out, because I get that we're all upset. I'm upset too, man. Just because I try to be optimistic a lot of the times, it's just the way I live my life. It doesn't mean that I'm not hurting too, man. I'm hurting greatly. This is my Chargers, dude. And it feels like, once again, coming so close, getting that hope at the tippity top just to see it come crashing down. We know what that feels like. It's Groundhog Day out here. It feels like, oh, we've already lived this 10 or 20 or 30 times in the last few years. Well, here we are back again. And you know what? Getting close at this point, I know there's a lot of people like, the Chargers this close, this close, this close. I don't know if getting close is any longer acceptable for this team. I think Chargers fans really are tired. But you know what? We talked a lot about this scenario. I do think there's some hope around the corner. We talked about the scenario before this game even kicked off in one of my second half prediction videos for the Chargers. And I'm here to tell you guys, it seems that things are still on track. You guys remember in that video, I did predict a loss. Begrudgingly, I predicted a loss because we were going up against a very good Kansas City Chiefs team. Which I know, again, it's crazy for some fans to hear that we're still on track, but trust me, it's about to get a whole lot better going forward, okay? So in this video, we're going to go through this game. We're going to see, what the Chargers did right, some of the things that we can build and expect on, going forward in the season, as well as why I'm actually pretty optimistic about the rest of our year with the way the Chargers are looking right now. So before we do get started, guys, quick shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. They got this awesome thing going on right now, guys. If you want a chance to get in on it, hit a pick 5 with Dak Prescott this Thanksgiving to turn $1 into $100. That means if you guys want to go in for $1, you can try and get yourself $100 if you get 5 picks. I know 5 picks is quite a lot, but $1, not too crazy of an entry price. So make sure you guys hit me up on Twitter. I'll be posting some of my picks for this definite entry for myself. Be sure to use code DIRECTOR when signing up to match your first deposit up to $100. Before we do kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. The Chargers versus Chiefs, Week 11 post-game report. We're going to call this one the Cusp, as we are getting close. We're on the cusp of something fantastic here, guys. But first off, hats off to the opponent, begrudgingly, okay? I'm a Chargers fan. We just don't go handing out compliments to Chiefs fans that are unwarranted. But you know what? This was a good game. And I know a lot of Chargers fans are not going to like hearing me say this, but this is a really good football team, okay? Kansas City, a very, very good football team. They were down a lot of players too, man, and they were still able to find some success behind mainly Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, but a very good football team, a very well-coached football team, and yes, still one of the best in the NFL. On the same in the same breath and on that same conversation, though, guys, the Chargers did stand toe-to-toe with this team. Okay, we are also down a heck of a number of players. We were down a lot of stars, especially Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, etc., even if he did go down during the game. The Chargers held their own. And in the end, I think this team, especially if you take a look at the pattern of games that we've seen the last couple of weeks, things are starting to look a lot better. And it takes an opponent like Kansas City for me to open my eyes despite a loss and say we're heading in the right direction. Now, I get it. I don't like saying we're heading in the right direction. I don't like, closing, my mind to the thought of, this team really let me down, because they did. But I also have to use my eyes and my brain to tell me that I saw a lot of good stuff this game. There were moments, I should say, that could have been the difference between a win or a loss, just like the one we're seeing right here. If Asante Samuel Jr. bats that ball down, what are we looking at in terms of a score? What are we looking at in terms of a win or loss? I don't know. Very, very close game. And we held our own. But this team is showing me some things that I do like going forward in a situation that's pretty good for if you're a Chargers fan, also going forward between weeks 12 and weeks 18. Let's get into the first topic of this game itself. The offense has awoken. Now, again, I think if you guys haven't checked out that second half prediction video, please do so, because I feel like it may provide a ray of hope in these trialing times. But at the same time, I think I did want to not pat myself on the back, but just shine a light on what we were talking about before this game even kicked off. Last week, we predicted that the offense was going to step up. And it was because of the returning talent of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Now, of course, Mike Williams didn't last very long in this game, but Keenan Allen did. And his presence was very much so felt. The return of Keenan Allen was a huge, huge part of the reason why this offense has stepped up big time. If you guys have been watching the Chargers offense the last, 4 or 5 weeks, it's been pretty stale. It's been pretty bland. It's been pretty tough to stomach for Chargers fans as things just really never materialize. Points were not being scored, and Justin Herbert felt like his talent was being tossed to the wayside. He was a body in the canal in Los Angeles. It was horrible. But now we're looking at a team with a returning star, just one returning star in Keenan Allen, and things are already starting to change. Herbert threw for almost 300 yards. And even our run game got a slice of that. Over 100 yards in that too. And I think Keenan Allen had a lot to do with that. Having that availability. This game would have been over a long time ago if we didn't have Keenan Allen with that huge, 3rd and 17 conversion for something like 30, 40 yards to Keenan Allen, keeping the game alive, giving us a chance at least coming back in this one. That's the kind of effect a guy like number 13 can have on a team. And that's just one guy. Who knows what this game would have looked like if number 81 stayed in the game, in Mike Williams. He came up with one really big clutch catch as well. Could have used a couple more of those throughout the game, especially in the third quarter. But just Keenan Allen left his footprint, left his mark on this team here in Week 11, and gave us a really good shot at winning this game. Without him, I don't know if this game is as close as it was. And his re-addition to the team is one reason why I'm very optimistic. It's helping this offense turn a corner. And this is something that was very important that we hit a lot on last week before kickoff. Now, additionally, on top of that, the sort of return of a guy like Keenan Allen is also impactful in other ways. And one of those ways is going to be how they affect the surrounding talent. This next segment, palm trees blossoming. A hugely underrated effect of returning stars, like we mentioned, is elevating other players on the roster. And this is one of those reasons why, with Josh Palmer, when he was given the responsibility of wide receiver 1 a couple weeks in a row, I felt like, he's one of those guys that's going to continue to develop, and he's got a lot of upside, but handing him that responsibility right now is going to be tough on him. Sure, he stepped up and did a great job, but it was really, really tough for him to go out there and, carry that responsibility. But then on the other side, when you have your wide receiver 1 back, things do get a little bit easier for these dudes. With Keenan Allen back on the field, Keenan drew a lot of attention from Kansas City's best defenders. And what this did was left Palmer with a prime opportunity to step up. And he did. Over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was on fire all night. And this is where I feel Josh Palmer belongs on this offense, right? Slot him in as the wide receiver 2 or 3, where he's not drawing in the crazy coverage like Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Those guys can handle it. They have different skill sets that allow them to thrive in those situations. But Josh Palmer, you line him up against like a slot corner or a cornerback 2 or 3. I think he's got a really good chance at slapping some things around, right? At finding some success and some space. And he did on Sunday night. And it was very, very awesome to witness. Because as he continues to find success in those situations, he will continue to develop into a wide receiver that maybe we can call upon as a wide receiver 1 or 2 someday. But right now, he's right where he belongs, and he found a lot of success. And this speaks to the upside, especially when offered help from other guys like Keenan and Mike. The upside exists. He's finding his rhythm, he's finding his footing, and he did have a hugely successful night on Sunday. Big ups to Josh Palmer. 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. The dude is exactly as advertised, and he really did step up in that situation. Not to say he didn't step up when it has to be a wide receiver 1, but again, where his role is on the team, I feel like he fit it very, very well versus the Chiefs. Now, another aspect of this offense, and I think, again, is part of turning the corner. Now, if you take a look at the defense for the Kansas City Chiefs before this game, yeah, one of the weaker defenses versus the pass, which is one of those reasons why we're like, hey, man, we got to get Justin Herbert out there. Let him sling it. Let him cook. Let him do his thing. That's the best possible chance we have at winning this game. For the most part, I feel like, at least for 2 or 3 quarters, the Chargers did do that. But on the other side of the ball, the Chiefs are actually pretty decent in defending against the run. They're pretty good at that. I think a little bit better than, I would say actually a bit better than average. And the Chargers still were able to find success on the ground. This segment called Return of the Run. Now, I want to point out how much better the run game was this week, in particular because of the opponent that we're going up against. Like I mentioned, they got a pretty decent run defense. But I felt like it was much less predictable, especially in the first half when in terms of how the Chargers were trying to get the run game going. I saw a couple of really nice counter plays, strong formation counters where we had, Xander Horvath out there quite a bit, which again really boggles my brain as to why we don't use number 40 more often. But when he was in the game, it felt like the blocking was there. Austin Eckler, the kind of guy that you want to get in space, was starting to find that space. And the Chargers were starting to develop some, or at least generate some yards on the ground. And yes, Exo facto, you're going to find some more success through the air if the defense has to worry a little bit more about what you're doing on the ground. They go hand in hand. And I think we all understand how important a stable run game can be for your passing game. But I feel like there's also examples where it works the other way around too, right? I feel like the Chargers, in their creative passing attack the first half, which again, the Chargers were doing pretty well. I think close to 200 yards through the air for Justin Herbert in the first half, finding a lot of success there. I feel like that creativeness and the way the Chargers were able to really find a rhythm with Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer, even Austin Eckler, I feel like that really opened things up for a run game as well. Because like I said, they go hand in hand. A strong running a game really helps your passing game, and I feel like that's the one that's always put in the limelight. But a strong passing game can also help your running game, and the Chargers' running attack has been really bad this season. If we can find a way to keep that momentum, to find that rhythm on the ground because of a maybe efficient offense in terms of their passing attack, or maybe in terms of creativity on how they run the ball, this can only help the Chargers going forward. And guess what? We're also getting a guy in Joshua Kelly back. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. That's also going to help further the Chargers' chances at improving their run game. One of the worst running attacks in football looked pretty good versus the Chiefs, and I'm hoping to see that trend continue. With help, from Herbert and Spiller and Horvath and all these other guys generating yards on the ground, the Chargers went over for 100 yards versus the Chiefs. And this is something, again, I hope we can continue to sustain. Because a running attack is something you're going to really need going forward versus some of these tougher teams through the air. But at the same time, we'll talk a little bit more about that schedule coming up here after the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, one of those big things that we do need to talk about in terms of criticism, though, the third quarter Houdini. The third quarter Houdini. What happened? The Chargers, first half, I think the past couple of weeks, they come off the ground running. They look real good, man, putting up points. We're starting off in the first quarter with a touchdown. Last week with DeAndre Carter, this week with Josh Palmer. Things are looking pretty hot. And all of a sudden, after the whistle blows in the second quarter to close out the first half, we come out the tunnel, and it's the Houdini act. Where are the Chargers? Something happened. That's kind of where things kind of started to fall apart. Now, we say on my stream a lot, if you guys watch the live streams, we say step on their throats. Keep your foot on the gas. And I think this is because we as Chargers fans can anticipate and maybe even feel the brakes being pumped. That's not something that you want to do. And it's maybe even a habit that I don't understand. The Chargers finding momentum, and they're finding a lot of success. And I'm seeing a lot of creativity. I'm seeing a lot of hope that they might be able to step up and try and maintain a lead. And then for whatever reason, we see maybe a comfort level reached. And then when that comfort level is reached, things start to slow down. Man. That's been one of the biggest problems for the Chargers this year. And again, one of the biggest problems as to why we lost this game. You keep your foot on the gas, Chargers, especially versus a team like Kansas City. We're also talking about, I don't care if we have a 2-score lead. I don't care if we have a 3-score lead. We're playing against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. No lead is safe. So you might as well stack on the points while you can. And honestly, I think it could have worked. If the Chargers had a different plan of attack in the third quarter, maybe we're looking at a different result this week. Every game we'll see for the Chargers, we're probably going to see a full quarter that is a bit lenient. Sometimes, recently, it's been the third quarter. Earlier, it was the first quarter. Sometimes it's the fourth quarter. You got to play a complete game of football, all 4 quarters. You can't ramp up, then ramp down and slow down. You got to stay consistent. Consistency is killing this team. The Chargers scored 0 points in the third quarter, and this gave the Chiefs an opening. And if you're the Chiefs, and if you're Andy Reid, and if you're Patrick Mahomes, you're going to exploit that. And they did. They exploited it. Even with the defense playing spectacularly by that point. I know the defense wasn't great, especially versus the run, but you know where they were great? In the red zone. They allowed how many field goals this game? It seemed like, oh my God, they're driving, they're going to score a touchdown, and then, whoa, they figured it out. Chargers got to stop 3 points. Let's go. Maintain the lead. As a matter of fact, they only allowed 16 points in the first 3 quarters of this game. And when you're talking a game versus Patrick Mahomes, that's pretty dang good. The Chargers, even with the field goals in the third, or I would say the Chargers, let's say even if they scored a field goal in the third quarter, right? If they didn't go scoreless, let's say they put up 3 points in the third quarter, they would have gone up a full touchdown. And that's pretty big. What was the score, right? 30 to 20 to 27? Something like that. That could have been the difference. A trip into the end zone even. Let's say the Chargers in the third quarter, they carry that momentum from the first half, and they get in the end zone. They put up 7. Put up 6 with a 7 extra, right? That could have been the difference between a win or loss this game. That puts you up 2 possessions. And so far, the Chargers had full control of this game. If they were able to maintain that momentum and find even a little bit of success in the third quarter, I think the Chargers do come away the victors this one. But instead, the first half momentum disappears. And the Chargers, in a very Chargers way, the Chargers fans are very familiar with, they find a way to lose. And I think all of us are very tired of seeing this team find a way to lose. You got to play a full 4 quarters of football, Chargers. I see us taking a quarter off for most games this year. I don't know if we've played a full, consistent 4-quarter game of football this season. Is that on the coaching? Is that on the players? Is that on what? It's got to be fixed. It's got to be addressed ASAP. Next up. This is something that I think maybe went overlooked a lot this game, guys. The O-line collapse. Okay? And this is something that needs addressing that's extremely important. Because once again, this week, I know fans get frustrated, and we see moments where Justin Herbert could have done better. And now I'm starting to see a lot of Justin Herbert slander again. You know what? Yeah, he wasn't perfect. Who is, right? But at the same time, he was pretty damn good at football on Sunday. And in my eyes, he played just as well as any quarterback could in the NFL. You put Mahomes, you put, Aaron Rodgers, you put Lamar Jackson, put any one of these quarterbacks in his shoes. I don't know who's going to be doing better than Justin Herbert. You got to take a look at that situation in that perspective, especially when the offensive line is struggling the way they did. The Chargers weren't calling a consistent game. The offense slowed down tremendously in the third quarter, but the offensive line really kind of hit a wall in the third quarter as well in the second half. Because the Chargers, let's be honest, I think we maybe got a little comfortable as Chargers fans. They've been pretty good in protecting Justin Herbert all year long. Up to this point, up until this game, I should say, Herbert had been the least sacked quarterback in the NFL. I think he had somewhere around 15 sacks on the season. And going into week 11, that's pretty dang good, man. That's pretty dang good. I know Phillip Rivers was like, where was that treatment back in San Diego? You know, I guys want to know how many sacks they allowed Sunday night? On Sunday night, they allowed a staggering 5 sacks on Justin Herbert. 5. That's 1/3, a full 1/3 of all the sacks that the Chargers have allowed up to this season so far in 11 weeks. I should say 10 weeks. 5 sacks in one game. Herbert was running for his life. So yeah, there's some things that he could have done better. That interception, right? 31 seconds left. A lot of Chargers fans upset that we weren't able to drive and try and find a way to tie the game even with a field goal. It is what it is. But the man had no time to pass. He threw in the double coverage to his best wide receiver because here comes the heat. There's only 30 seconds left on the clock. These are not excuses. These are facts. To keep this game alive, Justin Herbert had to try and make a play. Force the ball to one of his better players. And somehow getting the ball out of his hands right after taking a sack the first play on that drive. Mistakes are going to happen. And that's more so on the offensive line letting him down. The defensive line of the Chiefs stepping up, and the timing in which that play happened in the game. 31 seconds left. You're going to have to do something. You cannot stand in the pocket and take a sack. You're going to have to throw it out of bounds or throw it to your wide receiver. And on second down with so little time left, you're going to have to take a shot. And he did. So yeah, he could have done things better. But he is far, far, far away from the problem The offensive line, they got to sort things out. Can't see another game like that this season. So far, dudes, they've been doing real well. Get back to that groove. Keep number 10 on his feet. Next up, the biggest problem of the night, and probably the biggest problem we're going to see going forward. The run defense is fully regressed. We're back, man. Well, we're back, right? Welcome back to 2021, where our defense can't stop the run, and the points don't matter. That's where it feels like. And we spoke about this, right? We spoke about the Chargers, again, losing Austin Johnson, Tito, Covington, so many players down for the Chargers in the interior of that defensive line. And even before that, they weren't looking great either. They weren't looking as bad, but they were looking pretty bad. And before this game, we spoke a lot about the Chiefs' plan of attack coming in, right? This is a passing football team. If you're the Chiefs and you're a Chiefs fan, you can expect Patrick Mahomes to pass 30, 40 times a game, put up a ton of yards and quite a few yards through the air in the touchdowns, right? This game, we kind of came to expect that the Chiefs may be looking towards the run just a little bit more. And they did it. Several drives came off the back of the running game, which is very uncharacteristic for Kansas City. That team doesn't like, the run game. They're allergic to the run game. They're intolerant of the run game. This team likes to pass. You know what they did this game? They ran because the Chargers were that bad versus the run. And we just couldn't stop them. We just couldn't stop. So many drives where it was just handoff. Not a single pass. And here they are in the red zone. Sure, the Chargers did a good job at stopping them in the red zone and forcing field goals, but my goodness, that's going to be a characteristic of this defense that every team we face going forward is going to try and exploit. Now, good on the defense again. Good on the defense for standing tall in the red zone. They've been pretty dang good. But this is going to be a very familiar issue from last year, right? Teams are going to run unpunished. How many games have we seen this season that the teams run unpunished? We're not prepared to stop them. And as a Chargers fan, then we need to be prepared for this reality. Because I don't know if I think it might be too late for the Chargers to fix this, right? The way you fix this is by making moves. You go out there and you get guys like Sue, Linval Joseph. Guess what? A team did make those moves. They made both those moves. Their names are the Philadelphia Eagles. And both of those players went off like crazy on Sunday in their game. That was a great signing for the Eagles. Both of them, Sue and Linval. At this point, I don't know what you can do. Because that to me is what the solution was. You go out there and you sign some guys. We didn't sign nobody. The Chargers are going to need to stay ahead of their opponents from here on out. That's the only move I got left in my back pocket. The way to stop this, or to alleviate some of the pressure from this horrible run defense situation, is just to stay ahead of your opponents. That's it. Score points. Try and deter them from going to the ground over and over and over again. Oh my God, the clock is a factor. We're behind 2 possessions. We're going to have to throw. That's a situation you put yourself in more often than not. Because right now, at this point, it is too late. I think this is the run defense we're going to have for the rest of the season. And that does have something to speak to the lack of moves by the Chargers in the midseason. I get it. We don't have a lot of money. But this team has a heartbeat, and you owe it to them to try and alleviate some of these problems. Okay? Next up, speaking of alleviate some of these problems, this next segment's called Coaching Firmly in Our Crosshairs. Now, I'm going to put this image out there because there are some good things that I saw, okay? On defense especially, that's going to be the biggest emphasis of this video, of course, or of this segment. Of course, we're going to talk offense a little bit, but defensively, this was a collapse. I did see some great things out there, though. Derwin James, that sack, his utilization all over the field, being that X factor, that clean piece on the chessboard, he's doing his job, and he's looking fantastic. Now, he didn't have his best game on Sunday. That game-winning touchdown to Travis Kelce, that wasn't Derwin James' jurisdiction. But at the same time, I don't think we saw enough of what Derwin could bring to the defensive table as consistently as we needed to. The Chiefs had one guy left. They were down Mecole. They were down Juju. They were down very many of their passes. And I think Kadarius Toney went down at some point. The last job you have as a defensive coordinator is say, hey, we got to slow down Travis Kelce. That's the dude. You know what Kelce ended up doing that game? Over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. What happened? That's why I'm showing this photo. Now, we did find some success in pressuring Patrick Mahomes. That was a big part of this game, but you've got to put your best guy on Travis Kelce. Sure, it didn't work out 100% of the time. James has a great track record versus Travis Kelce. It was very uncharacteristic, but I saw a lot of instances, including this play, where maybe it should have been Derwin James. As good as Asante Samuel Jr. is, I don't know if he can cover a guy like Travis Kelce. You want to put your best on their best, especially if their best is their last guy. It just didn't feel very consistent. Okay? Let's go back to this photo. Now, I will say that injuries do play their part. Okay? I know it's tough. It's tough to call defense. It's tough to call games when you don't have your guys in there. But this hasn't wiped away the mounting numbers of bad decisions we've seen this season. Just when we start to see hope, right, in the play calling, maybe it's turned a corner. I like what I see. QB sneaks, fullback runs, blitzing the proper side with even Derwin James. Things are starting to come together, right? Eventually, everything comes to a screeching halt. Like what we talked about in the third quarter just a moment ago. Everything just kind of stops. Why? This feels like what I would call them like checkpoints in a Chargers game. Like big momentum, checkpoints. We make it so far, and for some reason, we slow down. And guess what? Teams like Kansas City, they're not going to have any problems using this window to catch up. This is what keeps Chargers games interesting. This is what keeps Chargers games full of heart attacks in the fourth quarter. The anxiety level at a premium high. These checkpoints where we slow down. I don't like that. And this, to me, speaks on poor execution, right? Poor execution in terms of maybe in some part on your players, but I feel like the players are stepping up. Even the backups like Troy Reeder, he had a fantastic game. The play calling is what I feel is being executed poorly on both sides. That's what's holding them back. The team is not getting over that hump because the consistency is just not there. Just like what we talked about in the third quarter. We're doing good first, doing good second quarter. Third quarter, we slow down. Fourth quarter, we try to catch up. We have to play a full game. Brandon Staley, like I mentioned, somehow let the Chiefs' one pass catcher and Travis Kelce go for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. How does that happen? I think it might be the consistency, the play calling, the personnel assignments. It just doesn't make sense to me. And there's also a very big lack of consistency on aggressiveness as well. The poor timing in that aggressiveness. I know it feels like Brandon Staley is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. But at the same time, the situations are always different, right? And us as Chargers fans, a lot of times are looking at it like scratching our heads like, why did we go for it on fourth down there? That doesn't make any sense. When we're already up by a touchdown, let's go up 2 possessions. Sometimes we've gone for it in fourth downs. And then there's situations like we saw on Sunday against Kansas City, punting it 4th and inches with 5 minutes left. That kind of feels like suicide if you're a Chargers fan. You don't punt it back to Patrick Mahomes. That's not good. That's no bueno. You got to take these chances where they make the most sense. And Kansas City is one of those sensible opponents where you do take more chances like that. And we didn't really see that. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's also many instances where we went for it with not much backing, logically. Like, why? Why are we going for it? It just feels like the inconsistency of that decision-making is starting to bite us in the butt a bit. At some point, the bottom's going to fall out. And now we got Coach Payton looming in the corner, right? Like, hey, man, these Chargers, maybe if they did this, or that, from a coaching standpoint, we'd be looking at a record of 8-2 right now instead of 5-5. Decisions like these could cause huge changes in 2023 to come, and that's a big part of it. I will sprinkle in a little bit about Joe Lombardi because everyone's always wanting to know, director, what do you think about Joe? Joe, he called a great first half of football, right? Then he receded back into his old ways. The coaching, something needs to change. And now they are firmly in our crosshairs as Chargers fans, I think. I think for a long time, we're all hoping, they'll figure it out. Brandon Staley showed a lot of promise last season. Joe Lombardi, top 5 offense last year. Nothing has been corrected so far, and we are into the second half of the season. I think that's where the crosshairs are right now. The coaching has to fix itself. Otherwise, again, opportunities like Coach Payton, maybe too good of a deal to pass up. Last couple segments. We'll make this quick because this video is getting a little bit long. The Sleeping Dragons, okay? This is where the hope comes in, all right? This is where it's like, it's been a tough game. I hated the loss there. Chargers should have stepped up. We're feeling really, defeated, this and that. Well, this is where things start to turn a corner because, again, this has been predicted. We predicted the loss. We predicted the turnaround in the offense. Now we're predicting what's going to happen going forward, okay? This segment called Sleeping Dragons. Now, like we mentioned, Keenan Allen's return was majorly felt on Sunday. Big time. Good to see number 13 back. Mike Williams, even though he exited early, he had a big presence in that game too in the short amount of time that he had. And he's going to be back soon. What I'm hearing in terms of that injury, his re-aggravation wasn't serious. He should be back pretty soon. So Mike Williams, I'm guessing he'll be back next week. At the very latest, week 13 versus the Vegas Raiders. We got Joshua Kelly, who's looking to come back to practice this week. The Chargers get their RB2 back. Isaiah Spiller's been doing fantastic. Now we actually know the order of those running backs. Eckler, Kelly, and then Spiller. And in that order, they look pretty dang good. Running attack's going to get a bit of a boost. And then we get Joey Bosa back in possibly 2 weeks, in my opinion. I don't think he's back next week, but I think he's going to be back in time to play Vegas. That's massive. Because we saw what just one return could do for this offense, right? And Keenan Allen. Big returns for the Chargers offense. And it's helping him turn a corner big time. Mike Williams' return will only help this offense hit that next level. But you know what? Joey Bosa's return, I can't tell you guys how huge this is going to be. Because as we mentioned, an underrated aspect of a returning player like this is how they affect and elevate everybody else. And I'm telling you, Bosa's return will be felt on every level. The defense starts in the trenches. And having that kind of pressure back, because Khalil Mack's been doing great despite not having help opposite side. We already have a small sample size of what that unit looks like together. Seeing them back, especially at this point of the season, it is going to be felt. Every level of that defense is going to improve. Linebackers will look great. Defensive backs will get more shots at interceptions. Safeties will have more time to position. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. Even the run game is going to improve with Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is a great run defender from the edge position. Joey Bosa and his return is one of those bookmarks in your year that you should be looking forward to. Because when he returns, things are going to look a lot different on defense just because of his presence. That's a big aspect of this. So those are your sleeping dragons. Now lastly, the last segment here, the cusp. Okay? The cusp being we are just around the corner. We are right there. You can taste it. You can smell it. You can see it. The Chargers, having turned a corner on offense, are about to turn a corner on momentum. And momentum's the biggest thing in football, in my opinion, that goes underrated. So here's the short version of what this, let's say a segment from our last video, the second half prediction video that we talked about last week. This is the short version, okay? We lost this game. That was predicted. That was expected. I was hoping for a different outcome, but we expected that, okay? We accounted for this. But you know what's also expected? A run, or a version of it. And when I mean a run, I mean a run of win, a pockets of wins. The Chargers are about to really find some momentum here. And this is because the Chargers' remaining strength of schedule is extremely favorable for Los Angeles. And with the Bolts proving that they're starting to return to full health and that these returns matter, and they're helping the offense at this point, the defense is going to get crazy good help from Joey Bosa. This is all coming at a great time. Week 12, Cardinals. That's a very winnable opponent, a very winnable matchup for the Chargers. Week 13, Raiders. Very winnable. Week 14, Dolphins. Tough, but winnable. Week 16, or I should say Week 15, Titans. Tough, but winnable. Week 16, Colts. Very winnable game. Week 17, Rams. At this point, with the way that team's looking, very winnable. Then Week 18, Broncos. Very winnable. You see, what I'm saying is 4 games that the Chargers have great odds against. Okay? And that would put us at like 9-5. Not necessarily all in a row, but 4 games that I feel very strongly the Chargers should win, putting us at 9-5. All right, not bad. Then I'm seeing one game that has pretty decent odds versus the Colts. Let's add a win there too. You can't, overlook any opponent, but I think the Chargers match up very well against them, and they're a team on the downward trend. The Chargers on an upward trend. So let's put us at 10-5. The last 2 games, tougher matchups against Tennessee and Miami. Probably the last 2 tough games of the season for the Chargers, at least perceived. I would have to believe we can win maybe one of those games, right? Titans aren't invincible. They got a horrible passing defense. The Dolphins aren't invisible. Their defense is actually not that great either. It's those offenses. The running offense of the Titans, the passing offense of the Dolphins. Those are things you got to worry about. I have to believe we can win one of those games. That would put us at 11-6. Now, do I think 11-6 is going to happen? I think we maybe fall just short of that. But even if we dropped to one of those games, or both of those games, right? 10-7. That's still a great spot to make the postseason. And at that point, you got Joey Bosa back. You got Mike Williams back. You got Keenan Allen back. You may even have Rashawn Slater back at that point. It's hard for us to imagine any hope after 2 straight losses. I get that. Chargers fans, we're in a slum. It sucks. The emotions are high, right? But you know what? These were against some of the best teams in the entire NFL. And we put up a heck of a fight. We're close. We're on the cusp. We have to remember, this team has been horribly injured. The first half of the season especially. The coaching has a lot of blame there as well, but we have been horribly injured. But as the schedule starts to soften up and this team finally gets its stars back, I think we are capable of ending this season with a bang. In the end, I firmly believe that the Chargers are capable of their first playoff win behind Justin Herbert. Truly. A lot depends on the coaching staff and their poor decision-making. Can they adjust on that? But the timing of the schedule, the returns, Justin Herbert's ascension and his play, everything adds up to we're actually on an upward trend. And the Chargers have been performing, even in those losses, very admirably versus the toughest teams in the NFL. And going into the rest of the schedule, I do think that a 10-7, nay, even an 11-6 record is within reach. We may see a run here by the Chargers very soon. So the season is not over. It's not what we expected, but it's not one that we're giving up on either. Because the timing of everything lines up to this season might actually end with a bang, and it could be pretty fun. So to end this video, GG's to the Chiefs. Fun game, good game, toe-to-toe. Not a lot of reffing nonsense like we saw last matchup. It was a good, clean game for the most part, and it was entertaining. GG's. We'll be back. I genuinely hope we see this team again in the postseason. I really do. I think we can take them. But it was a good game. And the Chargers, despite the loss, they put up a really good fight. I know some people are done saying, the moral victory. I get that. But you got to use your eyeballs. You got to see what's actually working, what's not working. What's working is working. Offense is looking good all of a sudden. That's really good news. Defense is struggling because of the run defense, whatever. They're stepping up in the red zone. And the schedule, after San Francisco, who's been dominating, and Kansas City, who's been dominating, the schedule's starting to soften up. We might have a reason to be very excited for the Chargers going forward. Just have some fun. Put your feet up. Hope that we make it into the postseason. Perhaps maybe even get our first win behind Justin Herbert. You never know. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this content. Make sure to hit up Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you guys take advantage of this, man. This is hot. This is cool, dude. $1 into $100. Definitely make sure you guys give that a shot. Use code Director to match your first deposit up to $100. This has been a fun one today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll catch you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Hang in there, Chargers fans. Our time is coming.